What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's questions or a particular topic or guest you'd like to have on, we're always checking the comments on YouTube. Love to hear from you guys and then be able to take your suggestions and work them into future episodes. Today's episode actually came from a suggestion we got from you guys. We've got a message to have Cody on, and you might know Cody from his time at Firepunk or his new business, but we wanted to have him on to talk about fabrication, how he designs amazing setups for trucks, and where the inspiration came from to go into this line of work. I know there's a lot of you out there that are interested in fabricating, welding, being able to create works of art that are also functional, so we're really looking forward to being able to chat with him today. Before we get to it, though, I want to give a shout out to a couple of our sponsors. The first is ATS Diesel. If you're in the market for a turbo kit, transmission upgrades, tons of other parts for your either old diesel truck, new diesel truck, make sure and head on over to atsdiesel.com, check out what they have, their phone number, email, chat, it's all right there on their website. So if you have questions, need to know about your particular setup, definitely reach out to them. They're more than happy to chat with you. I also want to give a shout out to our friends over at Kershaw Knives. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 23diesel20, you get 20% off site-wide. So it's a great way to save some money, get some really cool gear if you're looking for something for EDC, around the house, job site, glove box, hunting, fishing, anything like that. They've got a ton of new products for 2023. We did an episode with them earlier this year. It was really cool to hear about the innovation and the feedback that they get from their customers to create new lineups. One of them is the Duralock models, which are really nice. The opening mechanism keeps your fingers away from the blade when you open and close it. They got a bunch of different types of blade designs, handle material designs, and the blade's made out of D2 steel, which is really cool. So if you're in the market, head on over, check out their site, use code 23diesel20 for 20% off site-wide. All right, let's get to today's episode with Cody, chatting with him about fabricating, how he got started, how he turned it into a business where he finds the inspiration to create really beautiful works of art for trucks and diesel engines, but then also making them functional. Cody, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I definitely looking forward to chatting with you today. We had a listener reach out and say, hey man, you got to get Cody on the podcast. I want to know more about his fabrication, the stuff he builds. So I'm looking forward to learning about where you started, where you're at now, ask you some questions from somebody who's interested in getting into that side of the, so that side of the business and looking for some tips. So welcome to the Diesel Podcast.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, Patrick, thank you for having me. I've listened to your guys' podcast and show a good bit. Had a couple of good friends on it as well. So just glad to be here. But yeah, like you had said, I guess I can kind of start with, some of my past and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Take me back to the beginning when you decided you wanted to fabricate, build things, how you got started out.
Yeah. So I guess I won't try not to go on a trail too much, but yeah, so I kind of, grew up in a family that, was really heavy into motorsports. My grandfather owned a car dealership, and always seeing his, some of his guys that work for him, some of their toolbox and stuff. I was just blown away by what, what people can do with their hands. It's kind of portrayed, a lot more nowadays as far as what I do full time now. And so long story short, got into that. Went to college through a John Deere program, was heavy into tractors, pulling tractors. So that was kind of the starting to everything, being on a farm and stuff. I'm sure you're always fixing stuff, always welding stuff. And that's kind of where I started to get a little bit of the tick at. Man, I never went to school for welding. My high school, we had weld shop, and I was in the power sports diesel side of it. And just at the time, wasn't crazy big into welding. And then I ended up getting an opportunity to work at a place called Gene's Machine Shop down in Southern Ohio. And, Brent, former boss there, and a good his right-hand man, still to this day, Dan Lyons, he, kind of took me under his wing, got that engine dyno there. So was able to kind of get my hands kind of get my feet wet in, engines, all that kind of stuff, everything that kind of pertains to, the full package. And working back by Dan, I started welding just little bungs, just little fixing small odds and ends, started doing that. And from there, I welded full time there by any standard. but it was something at that point that like I had a welder. I was looking to just do more and build stuff. Built a second gen swap kit on my old 2006 Dodge that I had, and that was kind of the first thing that I built. Built a down pipe and a charge pipe, and I was like, man, like this is cool. Like you make this stuff look cool too. And from there, and seeing a lot of that at Gene's Machine Shop and seeing what Dan could build, he's one of the best fabricators to this day that I know. Being able to, he always told me that it's not how good of a welder you are. Like majority of the time people can pick up a torch and weld. That's just kind of nature of it. But the fabricating part of it is where it kind of changes dynamic. Being able to overcome mistakes and stuff, like it just intrigued me a lot. So leading that over into everything, we'll kind of get into it. I worked at from there. I went to a shop called, I'm sure a lot of people know, Firepunk Diesel over here in Plain City, Ohio. I live about 45 minutes from Loewen and the guys over there. And man, it's almost and then I guess just to get it out there, and it's honestly not something that's even really I haven't made public or anything. But about 6 weeks ago, we ended up splitting ways, all for the right reasons. It was time for me to grow on my own. It's something that I'd always, I have a bunch of friends and had made a lot of shops. I mean, Derek Rose, Ben Shaddy, a lot of these guys, man, they really they've had my back since kind of day one, I guess. Even on, I mean, Levon's giving me my wings to fly, and that's kind of the rough start kind of to where it's at. But yeah, man, getting when I got to Firepunk, it was kind of funny. I started just as a tech. I wasn't quite sure when I left Gene's Machine Shop what 100% I wanted to do. I wanted to still motorsports. I knew through and through that's what I wanted to do. You weren't going to take that away from me. I mean, I don't care if it was working for $2 an hour. That's what I wanted to be in. So one thing led to another, and at the time, Loewen, that was in 2017, 2018. Been 2017 when I started. I started in there. I was a weekend, and they asked me if they were looking for somebody to weld a small tab or something. And I was like, oh yeah, like I honestly kind of really didn't even mention that I was a welder or knew how to weld when I started there. So just for reference. And yeah, I was like, yeah, I'll weld it. No problem. And that kind of started a entire train effect of what was to come in the next, 5 years or so. Man, we grew Lynn is Levon's older brother. We built a lot of cool stuff. Like we started just me and him in a little corner of the main shop there. And man, we grew it into something that was just hard to believe looking back at now, to be honest. The S10 was a big thing for us. I crewed me and Larson are still extremely good friends. And, we shared a lot of memories on that, working on it late at night and whatnot. But the welding, I guess I'll kind of get back to the main part of it. The welding and stuff, man, it just kind of took off. A profound day or necessarily when it started was kind of that, when they needed a tab welded late at night. And that's kind of the rest is history from there. We started started doing some 4-link kits on some trucks. Lynn kind of was helping me a little bit on some of that stuff. And, I saw some guys on the internet, heavy into Instagram and all that, all the social media side of things. And there was a guy, his name's Dabs Wellington, just it pretty profound in my memory as far as the getting better at the TIG process, because it's a finicky girl for sure, just as well as like I know me and you were talking, you said you were kind of getting more and more into it. So like I saw what he was how he was able to manipulate a torch and really, I mean, create all these crazy things. And I'm like, man, like that's really cool. Between him and Jesse James, honestly, call it cliche or whatever you will. Man, I saw what those guys can do with their hands and what they can build. And like that clicked in me. And from there, the rest is history. Like, man, I would stay. Levon gave me the keys to the shop, and man, I'd sit in there till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, just welding. I mean, what exactly? Not particular. Man, I was just practicing. I wanted to be great at it, and something. The cool thing about welding, I think, that I think takes a little bit of a certain person to be interested in, or to get started and want to do it full time. It's something that you'll never perfect. You're always learning with it, and I think that's a really cool aspect to it. And that's kind of what clicked with me. And that's it's kind of the general backstory to what it's became. And ended up, I guess, for reference, I've had my own company for a couple years now. Just haven't taken it real full time, and it was time. 1X Precision is, my company name now, and we're just looking at growing stuff now.
There's a lot of cool aspects to everything that you mentioned, and there's so many different directions that I could go with questions
I know,
for you. One of them is,
that's kind of a ramble, but
one of them, like, because there's so many parts that interest me about it. Like, we had chatted a little bit about before the podcast, and I was telling you, I don't know the first thing about welding, about fabrication. I've just paid attention to diesel trucks for 15 years or a little bit longer, and I've started to see that the progression of it, we kind of went through all these phases of wheels and tires, lift kits. Then we went to power. Then we went to 1,000 horsepower, then 15, then 2,000, then 2,500. And there's all these innovations that are going on with tuning and, clutch pack material and billet shafts and suspension and then weight. And now these guys are taking these engines, these billet blocks, and they're putting them into pro mods and all that kind of stuff. But I had mentioned doing a podcast with Dustin Sterling a few months back with a C10 that he put a Duramax in, and he said, one of my main goals with this thing was to have the engine bay be symmetrical. And he lifted the hood, and it was on the podcast, and I'm looking at it, and it just clicked. And then I had also mentioned seeing a Firepunk TikTok where the hood came up on a truck, and there's a turbo and all the piping and everything. And I'm like, this is a whole other level of automotive that I've never really paid attention to, but I know guys like yourself and the people you mentioned have for a long time. And I wanted to bring attention to it because we think of these trucks and what they cost, how much money we put into them, how fast they go, the power, the innovation, all those things. And we want to separate our truck, the build. And I'm really curious about the creativity side of it. Where does that come from when you're fabricating something? How does that, kind of walk me through that process as best you can of just coming up with a vision for it.
Man, it's I don't know how many times I've been asked that question, but it's enough that every time I think about it, it's almost a little bit different of an answer in some form. But you mentioned like Dustin's truck, and my biggest thing that I always tried to do was I think a lot of it just comes off the mind. Like I spend a lot of time just looking, like some people call it mindlessly scrolling on social media, and it is to a point. But man, that helped me drastically. Just internet searching, like man, there's so many different forms of motorsports. I mean, you have everything over in Europe to you have F1 to uphill off-road buggies, complete rock bouncers call them, and just complete opposite ends of the spectrum. But at the heart of it, everything's all built with a welder. I mean, give or take composites, all that kind of stuff. But and they all have certain little niches, certain little details. Like I'm good friends with a couple guys in Australia, and they have different little pieces that they use. I'm like, holy crap, how have I never thought of that? But I think to answer your question as best as I can, man, a lot of it comes down to, at least for me, is talking to the customer. Like, what do you see? What do you want to see? Because at the end of the day, it's a big part of it for me. That's why I got into it was, man, I wanted it not to look like anybody else's. Like when you pop that hood, like you were mentioning, on a truck that I did at Firepunk, he's like, I want, when you open this hood, people are just mind blown of like what's going on. You got these massive turbos in there. You got electronic wastegates. You have all this billetness. Everything's tucked away. And a lot of that just comes from, honestly, staring at it. I'll sit. I mean, there's a lot of nights that I can recall. I'll sit on the ground in front of a project, and I won't have anything. I won't have headphones in. I won't have a phone around me, and I'll just stare at them. I know it kind of sounds dumb almost, but it's like, well, maybe I can run this tube this way, or run it this way, or do this. It takes a lot of brain power to do. I won't lie. Like I've lost a lot of sleep over some projects before. But just having that I think you have to be a creative person to do it in general. You know, I've always tried never to do the same thing twice. I know that kind of sound. I mean, you're always going to have some sort of doing things twice, but just a little bit of a different twist or a little bit of a different, idea or layout behind it. Man, it really goes far. Like seeing a customer pop their hood for the first. Stuart Ingraham was not to, I guess, name drop, but he had an F-350 Fummins truck at the shop, and that was one of the first larger projects that I took on, and like watching him open that hood for the first time, and he was mind blown. He's like, holy crap, like you guys exceeded expectations. And like, man, that's just that, I'm like, from here on out, well, I want that reaction every single time. It makes the customer feel great. And honestly, it makes me feel good too. Like, I use their money as best as possible. And I gave them something that I'm excited to look at. They're excited to look at. Everybody's happy. And, I think that's where the custom side of it really, I guess I pertain to, like building to the person. Because everybody's going to have different clicks they want. Some guys want powder coated. Some guys want raw material, raw form stuff. Some guys want, you name it. I mean, the abilities and what you can do are endless. It's just how much you think about it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that kind of answers it for the most part. But yeah, I mean, that's a topic I think we can go on for hours on. But yeah, at the heart of it, I think you got to be a creative person, and you got to spend time in it, or just it takes time. And that's another part of it, but we'll get into later.
How do you balance the functionality within the creativity?
Man, I think we should voice LeBonin for this one for sure. But no, we should, I'll be the first to admit, it's a struggle. It really is, because, there are people out there. There's a lot of people out there. They're just like, I don't care how long, or, I don't care how long it takes. I want the best and coolest thing possible. And that's great. I love doing that, but also there's the functionality guys, that, I love pertaining to too, because you can make it. I was able to start kind of getting into that, or not just starting getting into it, but, I was able to kind of work myself into that, because, you can work yourself into a hole either which way, kind of. You can be like, oh, I'm just going to do the custom kind of show car-y side of it. But a lot of what I did, and what I still do, it's on race cars. Well, if you know much about race cars, like you're working on them all the time. And a lot of it was trial and error on a lot of stuff. Like, hey, does this work? Does it hold up over time, or is it too flimsy, or is it too, does it move around too much? Do we need to beef it up? Do we need to brace it? Can we take weight out of it? Because at the end of the day, light race cars is where it's at. You want your car as light as you can. So that's where you get a titanium stuff. You can get into hard lining stuff. And as far as finding a heavy or a good balance with that, I think that's still something I'm on the hunt for a little bit. But I think just being open with the customer, I mean, that's that in itself right there. Like, ask them what they want. Hey, do you want to try to make, do you want to make this as quickly as we can, and just so you can make this race and not aesthetically. I mean, at the end of the day, you always have to, regardless of either which way, you have to hold yourself to a certain standard of quality. That's something that I will hound on every single day. It doesn't matter if I'm rushing in between rounds, just of fixing a repair, repairing something. The processes are going to be the same. That's something that I learned, I've learned the hard way, not cleaning stuff, trying to cut little tiny corners just to cut a little bit of time out of it. Cause So I'll be honest. It's a time consuming job or ability. And you just kind of have to stay true to it on yourself, I think. And but yeah, I think there's goods in both of it, and there's some negatives out of it too. But for the most part, I think communication with the customer, man, that's number one key. And finding but yeah, I mean, I think for the most part though, you're just gonna it takes time, trial and error, like I'd said. So I think we'll leave it with that.
And with time, I'm thinking about it in sort of a different way, like timelines or deadlines, I guess I could call it.
Oh,
Is
yeah, you're getting some good ones here for that. So
how does that factor into it? Because when I think of racing or I think of custom applications, I mean, ideally, you'd want to take all the time that you need to create something. But in motorsports, there's so many other things going on with the engine, the body, timelines, races, shows, things like that. How does that impact the whole process?
Well, I think it depends a lot on the person for sure, for one. As far as, so I'll just, as me being how I was, if it didn't matter the timeline I mean, we'll get into it, but it didn't matter the timeline for me. If I had a good idea in my head, or man, this will look killer on the truck or on the car or whatever. Man, I'll burn the midnight hours until it's done. To some extent, everything's okay in moderation. Just to say that, but I'm definitely guilty of burning a lot of hours to get projects done in a timely fashion. Am I saying that's the correct way to do it? Nope. I'll admit it. But at the same time, like, growing in the craft and growing in the industry, like, it's inevitable that that's going to happen. You're going to get put on timelines that you have to hit. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And man, like, for a truck that a lot of people are familiar with, the UC Justin Ziegler's Pro Street truck. Whew, that was for instance, I was in charge of getting that truck together. And man, like, those deadlines, those are hard to hit. They are. But I think planning your processes out, and for instance, I knew did a front half on the truck, did whole different turbo kits, different, we had a twin turbo kit for it, and we had a single turbo kit for racing. We had all these different parts and pieces that had to go together. But I also knew, and throughout the years of doing it, that I knew I wasn't going to tear everything back out when I still had things to, little knickknack stuff to weld on to the chassis. So I pulled it down, I think a week and a half before we needed to go testing, if that. I think maybe 4 days, and painted it and put it all together. And the process of putting it together went 10 times easier than if I would have pulled it apart when I thought I had everything welded. Man, making a good list, sticking to your list, trying to stick to your plan, it's inevitable that it's going to go off course. Just, I don't care how perfect of a plan you have when it comes to fab and racing, it's going to go wrong. Something's inevitable not to, go as planned, and you just have to take it for what it is. And being able to, on the fabrication side of it, being able to fix problems in a methodical way and not rushing them is something that comes with time. But man, it once you kind of hone in on that, and just, if you take another minute longer to think about it, another 5 minutes longer to think about it, in the long run, it might save you 3 hours, or 4 hours, or a day. I mean, you might get everything together and be like, oh crap, I completely forgot about that, because you just ran in and did it. And man, I've seen and been on both sides of that. And I think finding that, finding the balance in it, is something that's hard. And I guess that kind of answers the how to or uphold timelines. Now, creating timelines with customers, that's a whole nother one. And I'll just kind of dabble in that some too. It is hard. It's by far the hardest craft or shop, or, a fabrication shop is probably the hardest to schedule, simply because of all the unknowns. For instance, it could be completely fine, and then I go to buy some Vibrant HD clamps, just for an instance, and they're all out of stock of them, and they don't know when they'll be restocked in the next 4 months, and you're like, oh my, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
So, or chromoly's another prime example. I mean, man, we went through all the COVID stuff. Like, we had problems, and sometimes, we'd have to let a project sit there for a month. And I think that's why I think I've probably said it 4 or 5 times now, but having a weekly communication, at least with the customer, does wonders. As long as the customer is aware of what's happening, and is up to date on everything, has a current bill, man, it goes so much farther in the end, because everybody's happy. Everybody's on they're in the known. Nothing's being hot, nothing's being hidden. Like, we're not promising stuff that we're not going to be able to uphold. And we ran into that. That's it's kind of inevitable, and it's a learning thing. Excuse me. But I think more than anything, though, and then billing's another thing. Somebody asked, I had a guy ask me today, hey man, how much is it going to be to put 9-inch axles in my Ford front and rear? Okay. I can't go into my QuickBooks and just pick a line item. Yep, Ford custom 9-inch axles. And a lot of that, what I do, a lot of that is I bill hourly. I can get a rough idea. Usually, I always tell people, aim at the higher side and don't short yourself, because this is the easiest industry in the world to short yourself on money wise and time wise. And it's something that it's taken a long time to kind of really realize. Like, I have no problem donating some time, especially, just it's kind of nature of it. When you love something, it is what it is. But I think being able to have a general idea and aiming at the higher side of that price tag, that they're, what their budget is or something, and knowing that up front, it's key. You have to. I think it's a definite must for sure.
We'd got a listener had messaged into us, and he said, hey, you got to have Cody on the podcast. I am a welder, or he's learning it, and he said, I want to be like him in the future. And we've kind of touched on a lot of it so far, really inadvertently. And I'm just taking a stab here because I don't truly know. But I think you can learn how to weld. Somebody can teach you. You can practice. You can push yourself. You can judge yourself, have other people judge you on the actual physical skill. But I imagine it's much harder to find out some of the things you've talked about, like your creativity, your functionality, the timelines, billing, marketing, hiring employees, managing them, all these other things. Like, I've personally found in my niche, there was none of that. Nobody told me how to do it. There's no handbook. There's no Google page I could go to that said, this is how you do it. I had to learn it on the fly. So I really wanted to give this listener an inside look through your experience of the things that he could potentially face, and others who are listening that maybe they're not even welders or fabricators. Maybe they want to do something, own a storefront, start an online business, do any sort of career that's out there. And there's things that you're not told, or things you don't think about. So looking back on your experience from, college, John Deere, tractors, through Firepunk to starting your own business, what are a couple things or a handful of things that you would tell somebody, I wish I knew this when I started, but here, I'm going to give you this kind of knowledge and save you some time?
Yeah. I think on that, there's a lot. You mentioned self or you're your own critic, or you're your own best and worst critic. And I'm self-taught on all this as well. We all kind of were growing at Firepunk, and just me in general. I think if there's a couple things that I could tell anybody and everybody, as far as getting into anything, opening a business on your own in general. I mean, it's going to be scary. I mean, I'm still fresh in it. But you know what? You almost feel like you get that lost puppy dog feeling, I guess is what I called it. You know, in the end, it you have to put every ounce of your effort into it. Man, I will work until it's done. That's just kind of mentality that I've always had, as far as getting things done and, facing what's in front of me. You mentioned, I think for one thing that I've learned, finances and, having your money in line and having inventory. Like, I can't count on inventory enough. It was something that we struggled with tremendously, in every past place that I've worked. Having that lined out, that saves you more, one, headache, two, it makes it easier to sell parts. It makes it easier to push products that you have. You can see what's there. You can see how much money you have in inventory. You can see what's available. Hey, so you don't run into those problems of not being able to find vibrant clamps. That's prime example. If I would have known that we only had 2 in stock, but I needed 4. Well, if I would have had inventory, I would have gotten an alert that, saying that, they would have been out of stock or I needed to order more, and I probably could have saved myself. That for one, I mean, man, inventory is probably one of the biggest things I can hound on. And another thing I think, and take this for what it is, but enjoy the ride. Man, I have beat myself down more times than anybody that knows me knows. I'm hard on myself. In some ways, probably too much, at one point. But I always strive to be better. I mean, that for sure. And taking everything just to the front and, not trying to, always make an excuse to do it and not make an excuse not to do it. We're all guilty of it, and we do it all every day. It could be anything from cutting the grass to throwing a piece of trash away, or getting up and just going and putting it in the trash rather than throwing it across the shop. We're all guilty of stuff like that. But I think the more you hold yourself accountable for your actions and for what you do, it's something that I've had to learn. I'm a young kid in the game too, and man, I've let it get to my head before. I think I would be ignorant saying I haven't let it. But I've always tried to keep yourself humbled, and surround yourself with good people. And like I mentioned a couple of the guys that they run extremely successful businesses, and talking to them a bunch and being on a friendship level with them has helped me a ton. And I guess getting to that point with them was just being present. If there was a race, a sled pull, or anything that I could go to or be around, or conversation that I could be around, man, I was there. I was like a tick on your leg. I mean, I always wanted to be around it and learn about the industry, how to better myself. I mean, that's what it comes down to in the end. We're all doing this to be better. And, not being afraid to try new things. I think I can't speak about that enough. I think too, especially in the fabrication industry, because, you think, I'm guilty of it. I'll be like, yeah, you can't, that's as good as I'm going to be able to do. Well, I can promise you it's probably not, because you can always do better, and you'll see something, like I was mentioning about different industries all over the world. You'll see something on a race car or an F1 car and be like, man, what if I did this to that? And, you put some time in and figure it out, and you're like, you incorporate it into your own ideas, and wow, now I have a product that's even better. And that process, I think, is something that'll never end. And not being afraid to try new things, is, I mean, for three things on, what I would tell somebody is, yeah, not being afraid to try new things, and growing, a good work ethic. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Showing up and being there every day. And I mean, that's a lot easier said than done, especially when you're burning hours. And I would go months and months of working 100-hour week, 100-hour weeks. Like it was nothing. Not saying it's a healthy thing to do. Not saying it's a good thing to do, but just being consistent with your your schedule or your just your daily routine. I mean, you need to have that to be kind of grounded and focused on your work, I guess, if that makes sense. I think that's definitely a big thing, and pushing yourself, I could name more stuff off like that every day, but just pushing yourself. And like, if something, if it's going to take 5 minutes longer for a product to be better, then do it. I don't care if I kind of always looked at it from the standpoint of, yes, I always want paid for my work, and yes, I always want to be have some kind of monetary, I not always need monetary things from it as far as money per se. But man, I wouldn't care if I didn't get paid for that 5 minutes, because at the end of the day, I'm happier with it. Like, I knew I took all of my steps and all my processes that I've grown from trial and error over the years, and am able to be content with the product that I give out. And I have no hesitation on saying, yeah, I built that. Like that, I gave it my all. When I can look back on a project and say that, and not lie to myself, and just being honest with myself, that goes a long way. And it adds that confidence that you need to be able to venture into new avenues. If it's going from, building a turbo kit to building a chassis for a full car, it all correlates over. So
yeah,
that kind of answers some of that.
It's always been interesting to me to cover even things I don't know anything about. Like, I couldn't tell you the first thing about welding. I could just tell you, oh, that looks pretty cool. But it's I'm trying to find the right words for it, but it's like when we were talking about doing this episode, and you'd mentioned, hey, this is what I've done, and I've just, kind of ventured out on my own. Is that interests me to want to have a conversation, because you see a different side of it that you probably didn't see, say, 2 years ago or 5 years ago. And I love to be able to capture that aspect to it, because whenever somebody reaches out to me or the podcast and says, hey, can you talk to this person? I want to do what they do, or I want to be like them. I feel an obligation to be able to give them as clear of a picture of what they're going to face as possible, because I know they're not going to hear it anywhere else. So one of the things that kind of stuck with me when you're talking about, things to do, things that helped you. One thing that I've heard a lot of really successful people either tell me on the podcast or things I've just listened to on my own is balancing rest.
You say what now? Sorry,
like balancing rest, time away, time to like recenter. And, you mentioned doing 100-hour work weeks, 80-hour work weeks. And I think of being, younger, getting into an industry, I find what I want. I'm passionate about it. I go 0 to 100. I'm working hard. I'm making cool stuff. I'm learning things, balancing stuff. I'm staying late. I'm probably taking time away from friends or family. I'm not taking vacations. How, did Levon or somebody else say, hey, this is something, you got to have some rest time. You got to have some time to kind of recenter. How does that factor into all this as well?
Oh man, it factors in every way. It's I think this is a topic I could probably talk a ton on. There's no hiding it. Pushing yourself is a great thing, and being able, the first, put it into perspective, until you work 100-hour week, I've told people I've worked 100-hour week, and they'll look at me with eyes like, what do you mean? And it's like, there's X amount of days in a week. Like, that's easy. And I'll people will say, they'll have the ignorance of saying, and I've said it before, you can sleep when you're dead type thing. It's true, but at the same flip side, you not sleeping, not having healthy sleep, as far as, I'll be the first to admit, sleeping on the couch in the shop, sleeping on the floor, sleeping on the top of my toolbox. I've done it. I've done it for days on end. And looking back, I wouldn't trade. I have no regrets. Never have. I don't think I ever will. You always have to learn from your mistakes, what you've done. But I definitely have worked myself into a hole before. As far as, getting sleep. and getting good rest is an absolute must. And here in the last, 6 weeks or whatnot, Levon would hound on me. I mean, Levon gave me the keys and let me do let me do great things. And I mean, he would tell me all the time, like, you should go home. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't want to go home. Like, well, I'm fine. Well, reality, looking back at it now, I was like, I need to go to bed. Like, I haven't slept in a day and a half. Like, I'm just trying to get this project done. I'm trying to do this. And working on my I have my personal car, my personal race car, personal race truck. Like, man, I'd work my 8-10 hour day, and then I'd work another 7 on mine. And I would do that for weeks on end, 3-4 hours of sleep a night. Like, it's not healthy. They call, when people work that time, they call it the graveyard shift for a reason. I think the older generation saying "I told you so" type thing, it definitely plays into this some. And it's definitely, I've had my over the last 2 years. If I'd say in the last 3 years, if you'd have came to me 3 years ago and said, hey, I mean, depression, having a bad mental state is a real thing, I'd have laughed at you. I mean, I knew it was a real thing, obviously, but I would have laughed at you. I've been like, it's not. It's all up here. And turns out it is all up here. But you work long enough and bear yourself. And man, we'll talk it all out. Like, you will. I pushed a lot out of my life simply to get better. I mean, when I mean laser focus on racing and welding, laser focus. It didn't matter what it was. I'll cut it. I'd cut it out of my life. Like, hey, you want to go on a week-long trip to the Bahamas? No, I'm gonna sit here and weld some tubes. Like, not even think, not even second guess it. Hey, you want to go out on a Friday night? No, I'm in the shop. Sorry. Sunday. Hey, you want to go get breakfast on Sunday? No, I'm in the shop. Sorry. Like that. I mean, that was me to a T. I think anybody that's worked with me in the past can definitely say that, or definitely attest to that. It affects your mood primarily. Like, as far as now being where I'm at now in my life, as far as with running my own shop and growing this into what I hope it becomes, and not having a positive attitude and a clear headspace is everything. And it really is. If you need to have the ability to push yourself to the end, like push yourself, when I mean to the end, like work those late nights. You're going to have those. It's inevitable. And if you say you don't, then you're not pushing hard enough. You're not doing enough. And I'll hold my word to that to some extent, but at the same time, like, you need health. Like, you need to be healthy to be able to function at a high level and be able to work. Like, if you go 5 or 6 days with, I mean, I can get 6 hours, I'm good. And, scientists, all that kind of stuff, or I'll argue that. I think that's a whole nother topic in that. But, 6 hours, I feel great when I wake up. I mean, I think I slept 5 last night, call it what it is. But, and it worked myself. I worked myself into some holes, it caused me to lash out during the day or whatever it was, or somebody would bug me about call it a dumb question. To them, it's probably a hard question. To me, I'm like, well, just do that. Like, why are you asking me? It'll make you short. And it'll make people not like you. That's man, I'll be frontal about it. Like, it will. And it took me, I think I took it a little too far, as far as nothing else matters besides this welder and doing this. Like, I'm going to be great at this regardless of what it does. How much are you willing to sacrifice type thing, I think, kind of comes into that. And I'll sacrifice all of it for it. Looking back at it now, having a little bit of a different mindset with that, and not just laser focusing on that, I guess, or pounding that saying into my head. I shouldn't have done that for sure. But at the same time, it had benefit to it. Like, I mean, you name it, and I'll weld it. And like, what we were able to grow, and man, like, if you'd have told me 6 years ago we would be building these turbo kits on these semis, and man, I mean, not to speak numbers and these chassis and all this stuff, but we went from doing penny work, you know, $5,000-$10,000, like that's an awesome job, man, to now these guys are spending 150 to $200,000, or I mean more, on a street truck, just because they see the quality of work. And that, for me, that's kind of what linked those two together, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do not want to lose that. That's the vision that I have seen, and it's coming to fruition, and I don't want to lose it. So I just kept burying and burying myself. And, it definitely had its negative effect. And probably, I don't know if I'd really admit it or not, but maybe in more bad ways than not. As far as your mental clarity, like, I can't hound on that enough. You need to have that ability to kind of just, but yeah, sorry, I was about to say a bad word. You need the ability to kick butt all the time, and when the job's there, get it done at all costs. You need to have that. You need to be able to have that switch to turn on and off in your head. I think the older I've gotten, the more somebody's ripping out down the road in their Honda. But you need to have the ability to turn that switch on and off, to get that rest, to be able to have the clarity to wake up in the morning and attack the day head on and have a clear slate. Because if you go to bed at 4 a.m. and wake up at 6 for 4 days, and you give me a math problem or a something book related wise in the morning, when I'm on that schedule, 9 times out of 10, I'll probably mess it up. But if I get my good sleep and I'm ready to attack the day with a positive attitude, give it to me. I mean, even though math isn't my strong suit, surprisingly, it's the one class I think in high school and college I think I should have listened to now looking back. But yeah, and just staying true to your morals, and when I say morals, I mean your processes, and holding your standard. That's like, I hold that probably like I did the work thing to me. Always push to grow your standard, but never dip below that. And and I understand money gets tight, money gets tough. I mean, I think we can all attest to that. But like, if you're able to uphold your quality of work and always push to be better and always be pushing forward, the money will come. It will. Man, I went from making pennies, being the bottom of the totem pole man at a shop that I was like, this is the baddest thing in the world, baddest place to be. To working at a shop in a facility that, I mean, there's not many places in the country you're going to be able to go and make that kind of money, especially in this industry. And, looking back at that, like, wow, I mean, it was impressive. And I attest a lot of that to the hard work and stuff. I think I just call it young and dumb, still young and dumb, I guess, to some extent. But I never let my standard go below. I always pushed to be better, and it showed. It's a even uphill climb on that. And I think that's something I'll always tell people. Like, just because somebody wants something done quicker and cheaper and faster, in the long run, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to come back to get repaired again. So if you would have just fixed it and done it the right way to begin with, it was saving you time in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things. I'm really into sports, and I love to follow different other industries entirely. And some of these people that are highly successful in them, they'll talk about that laser focus, and they'll talk about these amazing things that they accomplished, but during that process, they alienated their family, sometimes their kids, their spouse, their friends, but they were on this path of being highly successful. But then they'll say, hey, looking back, I should have done this, this, and this. And I always wanted to be able to take that and bring it to diesel or the automotive industry. Because if I listen around, I don't hear this type of conversation very often, or those insights like you just mentioned. And I think that's a very valuable point for anybody looking to do what you do or do something similar or something entirely different. Is you obviously have ambition because you're self-taught and you worked
Yeah.
on these projects and you pushed yourself, and then you said, hey, I want to start my own shop. And
Yep.
I think it can be kind of easy to fall into that where you're just at 100 miles an hour the whole time, all day, every day. And I've heard, people tell me, man, I close down my shop one day during the week because that's our rest day, or I
Yep.
do this, or I step away, or I turn it off. And I think one of the key things, just that I agree with you 100%, you talk about quality. You talk about quality of fabricating things and building things, or it could be anything,
Yeah.
or even what I do. So when I turn it off is when I feel I can't hold a standard. So if I'm too tired, I've been up too long, there's been too much, and I can't maintain a standard that I set in my own head, that's the only thing I've ever found that allows me to turn it off. Nothing
Yep.
else, just that, because that's what people see. So your customers see it. Whoever watches this or listens to it sees it. And I
Yeah.
think no matter what someone's doing or they want to get into this, you set your standard in your head. And if you feel you can't maintain it because you don't have enough sleep, or you're in a bad mood, or you've worked too hard, or you're just exhausted, that's something I found that's really helped, is shut it down till you can maintain your standard.
Yeah. And I think like, and I agree 100% with that. I do think there's a big variation in people too. I think everybody's going to have their own, call it like you said, like until I can't like necessarily focus on one thing at a time. Like, all right, shut it off. We're going inside. We're done for the night. You know, that is a definite for sure. Like, and I've been there. I'll stare. Like, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I'll look at. I mean, a single tube. A single intercooler pipe. It could be. I mean, this long. It would be 12 inches long and have 3 radiuses in it, and it'll be 2 a.m. and I'll look at this and I just can't flow it together in my head right. And I'm like, man, what the hell? Like, oh, sorry, what the heck? Um, and I do apologize for any language. I try to, I'll look at it like, the heck, like, why can't I get it? Why can't I get it right? And to my own, the mind will fail a lot sooner than the body will, I guess. But you need the mind to do the work.
Yeah.
And I just, out of my own ignorance, I would just push it. I think everybody has the ability to do that. But I don't think it's the right way to do it. I think finding your way, and you're going to have to shut it off at some point, like we both said. But don't just shut it off just because you're tired, I guess.
There's a balance to it.
I know that's a vague thing to say. Like, I mean, it was 2 o'clock today and I was out. I'm nodding my head, just wanting to take a nap. It's like, man, snap out of it. Like, you have to have that mental intuitivity to kind of like just mentally, if you can mentally push through it, you'll be 10 times better off. Or you'll be able to do more. Because at the end of the day, like, if you're eating healthy and you are getting good sleep, you are capable of 10 times more than your mind will probably ever tell you. And on that as well, like, this is also something that's somewhat entertaining, and it's kind of, talking to you about it, I think will be kind of interesting. Different generations and and people, me and you are a different generation. I when I see my grandfather, he worked at his car dealership for such a long time, and he kind of flatlined as far as the work and what he was doing. He never kept pushing for the next thing. He got content. Contentness or contentment, whatever you want to call it, whatever the correct term is, language, probably should have listened to, probably should have paid more attention to that in school as well. And, I think you have to, being content is a good thing on some levels. And I think kind of portraying this into different generations, like, back in the day, and, even my parents, my grandparents, if you can fend for your family, raise your family, and take care of them, that's all. And, that definitely still holds true to this day, I believe. But I feel like a lot of people that were great at things sold themselves short just because other people told them you've done enough, or they got too content. They got too cozy and comfy.
Yep.
And I think always trying to find an avenue, or not even something different, can be in the same industry per se, but just pushing your mind. I think, for one, it does help with some of that mental clarity. It doesn't let you get brain fog, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, at least for me, it has. If I can always keep my mind kind of chasing something, it drastically helps me just kind of, hey, like, I can incorporate this to this to this to that to this to that. Call it what it is. But I think, I'm trying to go with, just being content is a good thing. But to a certain extent, like, you need to always be growing in this industry, or it will leave you behind. I mean, look where drag racing's came in the last 40 years. I mean, it goes to show you have to grow with the industry. And if you fall off, you fall off. I've seen it with some of my greatest friends, and people that I looked up to in the industry that I don't even know where they're at anymore. Yeah. And it's it's a love-hate relationship with the industry, I think. But if it's what you love to do, you have to love it. I will foremost, I guess, to add that into it too. Like, you have to love it just as much as anything else in your life, if not more. Like, I've let it consume my life. I mean, everything I do is racing related. I can't go anywhere. If I go to a family function, how's the race cars? It's not, hey, how's the nice haircut or something like that. It's, oh, how's the race cars? How's this? How's that? How's this? I've let it consume my life. It has definitely given me more friendships and everything. Friendships, leaders, people that have given me leadership advice, life advice. I mean, it's been great for my life. And everybody's going to grow differently in it. Like, I pushed myself too hard for a while. And I face those consequences for sure. And not afraid to say it. And I think being able to say that now, like, 10 times the clear headspace with it. And it's helped me. But for people getting into it, man, like, do it because you love it. Pushing yourself and just grow. Like, everybody's going to grow kind of at a different pace, but trusting the process. I know it's a generic term that tons and tons of people use, but man, I would say it on a daily basis. If something's not going right that day, guess what? Trust the process. It'll work out. I mean, it'll pan out in the long run. Just gotta let it take its course. Do your steps right, and things will fall on the line.
Well, it was really cool to chat with you and answer. Well, we got asked one question, and I just expanded it into like 10 of them. But I think it gives people a really good insight into fabricating and a lot of other things, that we touched on. So I hope that the listener that asked definitely got his answer. But for those who are listening and they say, "Hey, I saw that truck you worked on," or I want my truck to look different. How can people find, like, either your website or find you on social media, check out what you're doing, maybe ask you questions, maybe about this podcast, maybe about something entirely different pertaining to building stuff? How do they find you?
So my Instagram handle, it's Cody_1X Precision. My website's in the link. Facebook, my name's Cody Fisher. And that's pretty much the basis. I'm out of Ohio, just for reference. You can find me at a diesel race. I'm there. If there's a racetrack and there's a diesel running around, there's a hefty chance you'll find me there, or a sled pool or something like that. But yeah, I mean, anybody that, I guess, listener wise, man, don't be afraid to ask questions. Life advice, things I've learned growing up, in the industry and growing on my own. Feel free to ask. I want to see more people get into this. It's not a dying thing, but it is. Working with your hands is something that is, I hope I never live to see it gone. But it is, less people are getting into it. So if you're into it or want to learn more about it or want to come shadow for a day, for all I care, I mean, you're more than welcome to. So yeah, find me on any of those platforms and ask away. The messages are open.
Very cool. Well, thanks again for chatting with us and sharing your story and talking to us about some really important topics. I definitely enjoyed it and look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Yeah, awesome, Patrick. Well, hey, thank you again for the opportunity, and hopefully look forward to meeting you at some point along the line. I'm sure we'll run into each other.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 23diesel20 for 20% off site-wide. Great way to save some money, get some really cool gear if you need a knife for EDC or hunting, fishing around the job site. They've got a ton of different options, really to meet any budget, which is what's so cool about their lineup. One of their newest models that they've released this year is the Duralock, which is priced right. The blade's made out of D2 steel. The opening mechanism is super smooth, keeps your fingers away from the blade when you open and close it. And they have different choices for blade shape, length, different handle designs. So definitely make sure, head on over, check them out. And if you're in the market, use code 23diesel20 for 20% off site-wide. Also, our friends over at ATS Diesel, they've got a complete lineup of upgrades for your older truck, your newer truck. If you're in the market for a transmission, converter, rebuild kit, turbo kits, exhaust manifold, they've got a ton of different products for Cummins, Duramax, Powerstroke. Make sure and head on over to atsdiesel.com. Check them out. If you got questions, reach out to them. They're more than happy to help you. Make sure that you get the right upgrades for your truck. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters. Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, John, J. Cole, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube, podcast apps, or on any of our social media pages. We appreciate your support here in year 7 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you guys want to hear in 2023. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.